Meet catcher Josh Gibson, the Barry Bonds you've never heard of. Deemed by some as baseball's all-time home run king, Gibson is credited for hitting 800 home runs throughout his baseball career, though some research suggests that number may even exceed 1,000. Find your inner John Lennon with me for 1 second, and imagine. Imagine putting together a lineup of 9 players. But instead of that lineup consisting of 9 distinct players, you clone your favorite player 8 times and fill that lineup with all 9 of them. Now, do you know what your lineup of 9 Mike Trouts and my lineup of 9 Tony Von Frickens have in common? They're both way lesser alternatives to a lineup full of Josh Gibsons. Via Baseball Reference, there are 2 players who hold the 4 best seasons in what's called offensive win percentage. That's the rate at which a team with a lineup full of 1 player would win. The second and third best seasons of all time in offensive win percentage are held by Barry Bonds. These are regarded as 2 of the most impressive single seasons in the history of sports. Numbers 4 and 1 are held by Josh Gibson. Assuming average pitching and defense, a lineup with 9 Josh Gibsons is expected to win more games than a lineup with 9 of any other player in the history of professional baseball. While most of you are probably familiar, a video like this would still feel incomplete without at least a brief demonstration of how good Barry Bonds was at baseball to set the baseline. Did you really think I'd use his name and his image for views and not show him any love in return? I'm not trying to take all day, audience retention is always watching, so let's try and get this done in under 90 seconds? Barry Bonds may have been the greatest athlete in the history of Major League Baseball. Statistics help, but those who truly understand just how good he was were those lucky enough to watch him play throughout his 22-year-long career. He won 3 MVPs, 7 Silver Sluggers, hit 374 homers, and was a generational talent, and that was before the Kool-Aid. A 12-time Silver Slugger, 10-time OBP leader, 9-time OPS Plus leader, and all-time single-season and career home run champion. The stats he doesn't hold records in, he's at least visible in the rearview mirror. He was just 2 players away from winning 9 career MVPs. No other player in history has ever won more than 3. Babe Ruth's 170 walks in 1923 is good for the 4th highest single-season walk total ever. The only 3 to walk more were all named Barry Bonds. And by walk more, I mean by miles. Nobody other than Barry Bonds has been intentionally walked more than 45 times in a season. Bonds was intentionally walked 120 times in 2004. 515 was the lowest OBP Bonds put up in a season during his 4 consecutive MVP award run. There hadn't been a single player since Ted Williams and Mickey Mantle in 1957 to have an OBP 500 or better. This is what Bonds did from ages 36 to 39. In 2004, at age 39, his on-base percentage was .609, all the while stealing 30 or more bases 9 times, 40 or more bases 3 times, 52 bases in 1990, and playing 8 Gold Gloves worth of an elite defense in the outfield. There's really been no all-around player better than Barry Bonds in Major League Baseball, and there may not ever be again. Yet there's still one thing better than 9 Barry Bonds. Okay, there are 2 things better than 9 Barry Bonds. One of the 2 are 9 Josh Gibsons. Is it Bonds or is it Bondses? Bondses. Gibsonses? You may have guessed that Josh Gibson never got the chance to play integrated Major League Baseball. Baseball was unofficially segregated for more than 50 years, dating back to an 1880s so-called gentleman's agreement among baseball owners to disallow black players from their league. So these players organized their own clubs and spent years barnstorming across the United States. They eventually organized in 1920 when pitcher Rube Foster convinced black club owners to officially come together and form the Negro National League. While some of these teams didn't survive the Great Depression, the league was later rebuilt into the Negro National and American Leagues. Their All-Star game even rivaled Major League Baseball's own in attendance the year it was created. Even after baseball became integrated in the late 50s, Negro League history was kept separate from MLB's own, in spite of other leagues of the time having earned Major League status while being far less deserving. Fast forward almost a century, and finally on December 16, 2020, the league announced that they were bestowing Major League status onto several of the Negro Leagues, officially recognizing around 3,400 players as Major Leaguers, and including their statistics and history as part of Major League Baseball's own. These statistics are still incomplete, and context becomes increasingly more important when using them. Negro League teams played shorter regular seasons, spanning around 60 games a year. These are the stats you'll find on Baseball Reference. Data that isn't included are from the countless exhibition and barnstorming games, which shoots the total number of games played by a lot of these players per year to around 200. Now, these leagues had an immense amount of talent, the likes of Buck Leonard, Oscar Charleston, Satchel Paige, and of course, Paige's ex-battery mate, Josh Gibson. July 25th, 1930. The Homestead Grays of the ANL were playing at home in Pittsburgh when catcher Buck Ewing went down with a split finger. Don't worry, Buck. Batters facing Shohei Ohtani do it all the time. One more time for me. Imagine yourself going to a baseball game. If you're an Oakland A's fan, you may excuse yourself from this exercise. Now, a team's player gets hurt on the field. Naturally, he needs to be replaced. But instead of looking to their bench, the team calls on you, from the stands, to get down there and take over. His already established reputation in local semi-pro ball gave the Grays the perfect excuse to ask exactly this of Josh Gibson, and it was the stepping-off point for his career in Negro League baseball. A call to the stands marked the beginning of Gibson's monumental career. The rest is history. Now, how monumental are we talking? Gibson played in 69 games in 1943, which Baseball Reference lists as his longest official season on record. He had 116 hits, an average of 1.68 hits per game, a pace for 272 in a 162-game season, 10 more than Ichiro's single-season record. He scored 93 runs on pace for 218, 20 more than Billy Hamilton's single-season record. His .867 slugging percentage was the fourth highest for a single season of all time. His .560 on-base percentage is the third highest for a single season of all time. His .281 OPS plus is the highest single-season OPS plus of all time. These are from just his longest season on record, a season which didn't even include his best single-season counting stat rates. In 1937, he drove in 79 runs and hit 20 homers in just 39 games. That's an 83-homer pace. 40 of his 65 hits this year were for extra bases, resulting in the highest slugging percentage for a single season ever, though with fewer than 200 plate appearances in a season lasting only 39 games. This was the same year he was credited by the Sporting News for hitting a 580-foot homer out of the old Yankee Stadium. These days, all it takes is a pop-up. I can hear some of you screaming small sample, but the year-to-year variance was pretty low for someone putting up exactly the kind of historic numbers you'd think would be unsustainable. Gibson was playing at or near this level in just about every season of his professional career. Estimates for Gibson's final career home run total throughout his time in the Negro Leagues and independent ball range from the high 700s to the low thousands. The National Baseball Hall of Fame calls him a, quote, power-hitting catcher who hit almost 800. The Negro Leagues Baseball Museum credits him with 962 career homers in total. On a per-at-bat basis, Gibson was slugging homers at a faster rate in 1937 than all but two players in Major League history, besting Mark McGwire's 65-homer 1999. His career rate is bested by only McGwire, Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, and Aaron Judge. Pull up Baseball Reference and search for the all-time single-season leaders in batting average, you'll see Josh Gibson. Slugging percentage, you'll see Josh Gibson. On-base percentage, Josh Gibson. And this is based exclusively on the data we do have. This was Gibson's official career line playing in the Negro Leagues according to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Speedy shortstop Jose Reyes led Major League Baseball in triples twice from 2005 to 2007. He hit 46 of them in 2024 at-bats. Gibson hit 58 in nearly just as many throughout his official career. An OBP good for fourth all-time, the highest batting average of all time, and the highest slugging percentage of all time. There are statistical assumptions being made behind the scenes, but there is simply no denying that Gibson was historically good at this sport. Roughly 13 at-bats per home run extrapolated over 9,847 at-bats, the total for Barry Bonds' career. Assuming that rate holds puts Gibson on pace for 753 career home runs. Just 9 short of Bonds' career total. Consider the fact that it's unlikely that rate would hold without steroids, that number is lower. Josh Gibson takes steroids, that number is likely higher. When you include exhibition games, barnstorming, and his time overseas on top of that, those home run estimates don't seem that far off from what Gibson was capable of. Nowadays we use stats like OPS plus to account for offensive environment around the league and run scoring environments in ballparks. What statistics do you use to account for the environment these players lived in and the influence it had? The fact they could perform at this high a level when so many would rather see them fail, who'd rather see them not be allowed to play at all. The smallest things to be taken for granted when it comes to playing baseball could prove to be difficult for these teams, something as simple as a place to play. Many Negro League teams had to wait for league stadiums to be free before they could play themselves. Of course, segregated hotels, restaurants, water fountains, at home and on road trips. How can statistics account for these? I was shocked to find a player I'd never heard of atop all of these single season and career rankings, which I think speaks to the importance of the research done to compile this data, as well as this data and the history that comes along with it finally being officially integrated. It doesn't fix what came before, and there's still history that'll never be fully uncovered, but it's better than not doing it at all, I think. These players and their legends extend far beyond any data, complete or otherwise, could possibly express. though to no fault of the talented and dedicated researchers who compiled it. Those working from the Seamheads Negro League database and SABR, among others, deserve our thanks for helping make this significant, yet underappreciated chunk of baseball history more accessible. Little, if anything, in life was easy for Negro League players, and Josh Gibson's life was no exception. He suffered horrible personal tragedy right at the start of his career. His physical and psychological health began to decline in the early 40s. He fell into a coma and was diagnosed with a brain tumor the same year he won his first World Series. Not that you could ever tell from his stat line, though. Yet Gibson never let these things stop him on the field, particularly with the bat, and the preservation of his legend over the last 90 years has been all the better for it. Even with no complete data to cite, an irreparable burden entirely out of the hands of Josh Gibson and thousands of other Negro League players, lower bounds on the estimates of Gibson's career statistics make him nothing short of a generational talent. Josh Gibson suffered a stroke on January 20th, 1947, and died later that day at the age of 35. Not even 3 months later, Jackie Robinson made his Major League Baseball debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers. If not for his untimely passing, Gibson may very well have found his way into integrated Major League Baseball. It's undoubtedly a shame to think about what could have been, but it's our responsibility to instead appreciate what was. And what there was little else this man could have done better on a diamond. He may not have lived to see integrated baseball, but you can bet his impact on the popularity of both the Negro Leagues and the sport at large helped get baseball to that point. In 1972, both Josh Gibson and his legend were elected into the National Baseball Hall of Fame, the sport he once dominated so fiercely, now honoring him and his career. Some called Josh Gibson the Black Babe Ruth. Others called Babe Ruth the White Josh Gibson. They played the same sport, but they went through very different lives. They may have shared little else, but were both generational talents and are among the top handful of human beings to ever play this sport. On August 7, 2007, Barry Bonds broke Henry Hank Aaron's home run record with the 756th of his Major League career. When asked about this groundbreaking, once-in-a-generation moment, he responded, "No, in my heart, it belongs to Josh Gibson."